We are reading through the book of Matthew this month, taking a chapter a day, and each day I'm posting a video clip just to give a thought or two about that chapter. I'm not trying to go in depth and give every little detail. That would take a long time, but I want to give a nugget or two to think about. And today we are on Matthew 17. This has a wonderful incident recorded here, and I'm actually going to read it, the Transfiguration. Now, after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and his brother John and led them up on a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him. Then Peter answered and said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, let us make 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." And while he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And suddenly a voice came out of the cloud saying, "This is my son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him." When the disciples heard it, they fell on their faces and were greatly afraid. But Jesus came and touched them and said, "Arise and do not be afraid." When they lifted up their eyes and saw, there was no one but Jesus only. Now, as they came down from the mountain, Jesus commanded them, saying, "Tell the vision to no one until the Son of Man is risen from the dead." And his disciples asked him, saying, "Why do the scribes say Elijah must come first?" Jesus answered and said to them, "Indeed, Elijah is coming first and will restore all things. But I say to you that Elijah has come already, and they did not know it was him, and they did whatever they wished. Like the Son of Man is also about to suffer at their hands." Then the disciples understood that he spoke to them about John the Baptist. Now, this is an incredible event, and there's nothing quite like it in Scripture, where he was transfigured and God's voice appeared out of this cloud and Moses and Elijah appeared. Lots in here to unpack. A lot of times how we learn, I mentioned from an earlier video clip, is by asking questions about why. Why this? Why that? Just trying to understand more. What was the point of the incident? Why did this happen at all? It doesn't explicitly tell us, we can only speculate. Jesus told Peter, James, and John, the only 3 disciples that were there, not to share this with others. So it seems like it was only for them. We don't know what Jesus was talking about in this accounting with Moses and Elijah, but in the Luke version, it says they were talking about Jesus' death. Okay, maybe that had something to do with the point of the incident. How did the disciples know it was Moses and Elijah? They weren't wearing name tags. They weren't any pictures that they could have compared them to. They certainly didn't just recognize them saying, "Oh, of course, I've seen your picture up, in the temple. That must be you." We don't know. Why Moses and Elijah in the first place? Well, that we have a pretty good idea about, because they represented the Old Testament as a whole, which was the scriptures that existed when this happened. Moses was often thought of as representing the entire law. Elijah was often thought of as representing the entire prophets. So when they're saying Moses and Elijah, that can be understood to say all the scriptures, the Old Testament. In fact, in Matthew 22, when Jesus is asked, "What is the greatest commandment?" He says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself." Then he said, "On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets." There again, we see that all the law and the prophets. When the cloud enveloped the disciples and they heard the voice from God, the disciples dropped to the ground and hid their faces. It said they were afraid. They knew from the Old Testament, from their scriptures, that they could not see God and live. They didn't want to risk anything. Shortly thereafter, Jesus told them to get up and not be afraid. When they did, they only saw Jesus. No Moses, no Elijah, cloud gone, just Jesus. What if it had been just Moses? Couldn't have been that. But some people, like the Pharisees, are so stuck on the law in the Old Testament that they forget the grace from God. What if it wasn't just Elijah that they saw there? Some people are too focused on wanting to see a miracle, to realize who God is, see God's power in action. When they looked up, they didn't see all three again, Moses, Elijah, and Jesus. They weren't on equal footing. The voice from above made it clear that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Moses and Elijah could only play supporting roles. It could have been that they looked up and no one remained. Sometimes it feels like that for people today. They have a great experience with God. Then they go home and return to life as usual, as if nothing happened. But when they looked up, only Jesus remained, because that's all they needed. That's all we need too. Jesus is what we need. He has the answers. That's what we should be focusing on today.